I wrote this series, I actually wrote it all on the bus. But when it came time to illustrate it, I don't know, I didn't really have artist block, but I was never really satisfied. What I ended up doing was I drew it all, which is what you see here. I really liked the texture in the trees, I really liked the little girl. I liked a lot of the characters and expressions of the dragon. I didn't really like that it was three-dimensional, but I didn't really want to draw it flat, so I hemmed and hawed a lot. And ultimately in my head, I envisioned the whole series in cut paper. So I drew it all out, which is always a step I do anyway, because I want to make sure that the layout is pristine. I want to know what the pages look like when you turn from one page to another. I want to make sure that the movement of the story is part of the illustration. But when I scanned these in and started using Illustrator and Photoshop to fill in the colors to make sure they were right, I had really beautiful color selection, but all of the shapes didn't translate. They didn't feel playful. I tried to reconstruct the whole thing in Illustrator, and that was not only time consuming, but it didn't really give me the movement that I was expecting. So I just turned to my wife and I said, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do one page in cut paper and see if that's actually the right medium, because I know that's going to take forever. And so I sat down and I cut all those birch trees out of this really nice handmade paper, and I made all these little details and these little marks, and I did this really nice little horizon line across here. This is actually the edge of a piece of paper, so I just made one really nice, long, uneven cut, and then I allowed the edge of the paper to kind of just feather out. And I glued this down, and then I started to piece this all together, and then I spent copious amounts of hours cutting out these little tiny scale shapes. So they're anywhere from 3 to 4 little loops all the way across, and I just made piles and piles of these. And then I started to construct these little movement lines up here so that they could connect. I constructed the dragon's face. I wanted to make the dragon feel a lot more playful, have a lot more movement and character. I didn't like in here he has these big horns and these really stark looking eyes, which are, beautiful in their own way, but it felt too distant and detached. I didn't feel like he was making eye contact with Cori. There was this ghostly property to him, and again, I felt like I was losing that playfulness. So with cut paper, I cut out this three-dimensional property because I really wanted to make it feel flatter. I wanted you, the audience, to see that this was made of paper, that this was designed. So I added all this hair to get a lot of craziness, because I really like the kind of madness that this kind of dragon feels. He's very manic in the story. He's afraid and anxious, and Cori helps to address this as part of her narrative. But I really wanted to kind of emphasize that there was this clumsy concern around how this dragon was interacting with the world, and so I tried to capture that with his expression, this really big goofy tooth, these big kind of silly eyes, the fact that his mouth is open but way back here instead of open way up here. Now that's also here in the illustration as well. This is my signature for this particular character. And then all this crazy nonsensical hair here is just designed to create that kind of frenzy around his expression. Cori is always very open. Now in the illustrations, a lot of her arms are crossed, and her arms are crossed in 1 or 2 of the story actual pages, but I tried to remove that posture from her. I tried to keep her arms open and gesturous so that she was always very welcoming and very, very forward and very dynamic. In addition, when I did the layouts, Cori was always on one side of the book instead of alternating, and I flipped that up because I really wanted, as the children were reading the book, I wanted them to be looking back and forth from one page to the other. And then as you turn the page, it's like, okay, well that's where Cori is now, and that's what the dragon is. It created more interaction when I was looking at the pages, which is, again, another reason that I draw everything out first is, as I draw all of this out, I get all this extra information. Okay, well now what does this look like when I turn all the pages? So it might feel like a very redundant step to draw everything and then to cut it all out of paper, but it actually helps me make the book as a whole instead of a single illustration. That way I can stack and layer the pages, and I can really structure the feeling of the book as an object so that it's something that you're interacting with. Hopefully, the children are reading the books by themselves and they get to turn the pages and look at everything, but also hopefully it's something that you're reading with your children so that you're experiencing the book as well. So this is something that I take a great pride in, and I take care to deliver for you guys. Something that's very important to me is that this is an experience that you have.